Good afternoon and welcome to week 17 of our Lunchtime live series. I'm Chandra Luckett, Chief Marketing Officer here at Chris 180, and we're thrilled that you decided to join us today. We're talking about the hot topic that is on the top of minds everywhere in Metro Atlanta, the return to school. Will kids go back virtually or in person? Will they wear masks or none at all? What does the future of the next month hold for Metro Atlanta students? But most importantly, how can parents best protect their kids' mental health during this uncertain time? Today, our panelists will highlight and give some tips on ways parents can soothe fears and concerns for children of all ages. Today, our special guests are Selima Morrow, who is the director of our Outreach and Community Housing Program here at Chris 180, and Shannon Grossman, who is a therapist at the At Promise Center. Thank you both for being here, and take it away.
Chandra, we appreciate the opportunity to be here today. As Chandra mentioned, the hot topic, kids are going back to school. We just got out of school, recently had to go back home because of COVID-19, and now we're going back into school. The question is, we're going back, what does that look like? As a parent, that has to be a very heavy decision to kind of figure out. I'm trying to keep myself safe, my kids safe, and also I want my child to get their education. So what do I do is what we hear a lot of parents say, like, what is the answer? As mental health professionals, the answer is to make sure we make a decision that is best for you and your child, best for you and your family. That decision should make sure that we're including the child's well-being and making sure that we're incorporating them in our decisions. What do you think, Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, just as you're discussing, it is important to make a decision that is collective and safe for you and your family. I also just want to point out, it isn't like a pretty bow answer. We don't have all these answers. It's new for us. It's change for everyone.
Correct.
And so it's figuring out collectively what resources do we have available to kind of create this decision for our families. So
collective decision making is awesome, and also builds communication in the family as well, so that way the child knows they're a part of this. They're the end result of the high quality education that we're expecting our kids to receive, but they're part of this decision making. But at the same time, as parents, we worry about our kids being stressed out. Like, there's things on the media, there's things on TikTok, there's things that our kids may have access to that we don't always have control over. So how do we manage our kids' mental health during this decision of going back to school?
Yeah, I think it's important to just notice different signs and just noticing their behaviors. And so that might look like change in sleeping patterns. Maybe they're sleeping more than usual. They're not getting enough sleep. Maybe they're choosing to not be around, kind of isolating themselves more, increasing in irritability, mood swings. All of those are just signs to begin to start asking questions. And a way we kind of talked about that you can kind of slide into creating those open and safe conversations is by touching base with one another on a regular basis. And so that might look like, a little emotion check-in, and we talked about little fun ways that you can do that, but that's something I incorporate in my sessions. Is we'll always start off by a check-in. Where are you today? And so something I like to do is, everyone knows emojis. I know it's very popular right now.
Emojis are pretty cool. Yeah. You can use them to kind of describe the words you may not have, to say, this is how I'm feeling.
Yes, yeah.
So I think that's awesome to kind of check in with our kids, because sometimes, dealing with the pandemic and still having to work and have other obligations, parents do want to check in with their kids, and not that they're ignoring it, but just saying, what ways can I do that? So I think definitely, checking in with our children and saying, hey, how do you feel today? You can just show me, you can send me a text and show me the actual emoji that you're feeling, so that way I, as a parent, can know how to respond and just say, okay, well, what can we do to get you, either if you're happy, okay, great, why are you happy? I think having those and more in-depth conversations will help the child not only articulate and communicate, but then they can connect that emoji to the feeling.
Mhm.
Just say, okay, yeah, I am happy. This is the reason why I'm happy. And then also if the child is not feeling like maybe they're feeling stressed or maybe they're feeling like, I don't know what's going on. I know we got to go back to school. Then the parent, we can start having a conversation to say, let's talk about it. Like, what is it about school that you may be having some concerns about? And then sharing how we feel.
Yeah, it's important.
I think that's important to say, you know
Yes.
what, I want you to get your education. I want you to engage with your friends. I want you to be a part of your school community. But at the same time, I want you to be safe.
Mhm.
So definitely saying that to our children, say, I have the same fears, can validate, not only the child's emotions and feelings, it validates the parents. And then we're in this together. There's no separation, and that we are doing this together to get through it. I think that's super huge.
Yeah, definitely attuning to one another. It allows them to know that they aren't in this alone, just, as a parent, and just, checking in with your kid. They're very aware, they're resilient, they're smart. And so they're going to notice like when you're feeling stressed or something is going on that's different. And so one thing we mentioned, like there is a lot of change and there are a lot of big decisions being made and what it looks like when we do go back. Is it virtual? Is it in person? Is it virtual half the time? Like there are these big choices, and it's kind of the fear of the unknown. And one important point is because there is so much unknown, there might be decisions that are made. However, those decisions might also change. And so it's kind of already setting them up to know each day, we are going to focus on each day and what we know, and kind of just going from there, knowing that it might change.
Because things are changing every hour. Like CDC may say something, or the president may say something, or there's different things. But I think acknowledging that that things will change, the consistency of the change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think saying that to our children is very, very important. And then we can kind of move and go forward from there.
Mm-hmm.
But I see we have a question that came in.
Yes, this one comes from Sarah on Instagram. It says, my kid has done a great job social distancing and masking. She started to worry about going out and being in buildings. How do we address this? I don't want her to be afraid.
Definitely. That is a big, big, big concern. We don't want her to be afraid at all. I think definitely what is important is to practice your self-care and self-skills to make sure that you're safe. So if your daughter is definitely practicing social distancing, is awesome. And the fact that she is wearing protective equipment is awesome as well. Continue to encourage her to do that, even in outside buildings, and let her know that that's her decision. And make it very confident. Let her be confident in her decision that, yes, you are protecting yourself and others by social distancing and wearing your mask, and don't feel that you have to take it off because someone else may not have theirs on. So I think, too, is more like building up confidence in our kids, and whatever decision that they decide to make, that they can carry it out and don't have to worry about changing because the environment says to change.
And I would say just meeting your child where they are. And so if they do voice that fear or that they are afraid, just validating that for them, and then working on what we can do when that feeling does come up for you. And so just kind of like you said, creating those coping skills and those tools that they know they can grab onto when they're in that particular situation.
Thank you. I think we have another question coming in.
Yes, this one comes from Facebook. It says, as college campuses open, how do you help your college student deal with the anxiety and the transition back to campus life?
Yes, absolutely. It goes back to what we were saying, involving your child in the conversation and sharing and say, hey, first of all, going to college is scary. It's a new transition in itself.
Yes.
You're going to meet new friends. You're going to meet professors. You're trying to find yourself developmentally. You're in a different space. But again, I think the principle of communication with your child, no matter how old, whether they're 2 or 22, that this is what's going on. This is how I feel about your safety. Let me hear what you have to say. And then how can we come together and create ways to address the concern together is what's important. You definitely want to relieve anxiety. You want to relieve any additional stress because you want to be able to control what you can control. And what I mean by that is like you can control your own social distancing. You can control wearing your own mask. You can control ensuring you wash your hands. So trying to empower your child in that way.
And like you were saying, just college is a new setting. So it's kind of allowing and kind of working with them on creating their routine and structure, which is definitely new when you are in the college world. But just also knowing they aren't alone. I think a check-in is important if you are not in the same space as them. Just like a daily check-in, what that looks like for you and your family. But it's important that somebody is checking in on them.
Great. You made me think about something about routines that we were talking about, like tangible things that parents can do with their kids. Routines and rituals are super important. I know a couple of episodes back, some of our colleagues have talked about that, but definitely even in the decision of your child going to school sometime or still being virtual or being virtual all the time, those routines of what is happening next needs to be in place. So if you're doing virtual learning, from 9 to 12, this is what we have. And then as a parent who probably is working virtual too, I have to, attend to my job duties and say maybe 12:30 to 3, I'm doing this, and we can kind of check in with each other. But I definitely think activities and having that ritual and that routine is super important that we can't get away from. We often as parents are like, okay, you go to school, you come home, you do your homework, you take a shower, you go to bed. Continue that same routine because that will help with our production and our well-being because you're like, oh, we know what's coming next. So
another thing we felt like was important to talk about is how parents can support their children during this transition. One of the things I know that you were mentioning was specifically about kind of allowing them to engage in the process of like decision making, kind of like voicing our concerns or thoughts or feelings all about this change. And so you had a good idea that I feel like would be important to share about.
Definitely. Just when we're incorporating what our children into our decisions, finding out like how do we carry that out? Like what steps should we take to make sure that our child's voice is being heard? So we kind of was talking about the advocacy piece. Like, yes, parents are aware of maybe your local school district is having meetings about the decision. But then when you're talking to your child to say, what do you want to do? What do you want me to say as your voice in this concern? And what would you like to do? Do you want to make a flyer? Do you want to make a poster? Do you want to be a part of this meeting? Like just incorporating the child, I think is important. And is when I think about making flyers and advocating, it becomes a family activity too. So it creates not only that communication, but it creates creativity in the minds of your child. We're doing artwork where may want to be dazzled up, but at the same time, the ultimate goal is including your child not only in the verbal decision making, but the activity of promoting, what they want for themselves too. I think that's super important.
And I know we are focused on all age ranges. So one thing I like to say is draw it out. If you're not in a place where you can write or read, just draw out what you are feeling. And honestly, It's fun to join in on as adults because there's a lot of things that might come up in your artwork that you don't even realize yourself. And so that's a fun creative tool as well.
That's awesome. I like that. And create that creative balance, that creative space. Yes. It looks like we have another question.
Yes, it says, I want to involve my teen in the decision-making process, deciding to go virtual all year or just half the year, but he seems really stressed out about not seeing his friends, and I don't want it to be an emotional decision. How can I have a solid conversation with him?
Absolutely. Your teenager, he's in this stage of trying to figure it out for himself as well. You definitely want to acknowledge that and say, hey, I know you're feeling a little anxious about it. I know you want to see your friends at the same time. How about we what time is good for us to talk about it? Mm-hmm. Because right now it's, you may be feeling be honest, you're maybe feeling a certain kind of way. And I want to protect you. And I'm a little emotional right now because I want to say a different decision. But I definitely I think is agreed upon to say, let's talk about it. Maybe tomorrow you think it'd be a good time or another time. And if they say no, that's okay. You can come back and revisit it. Because things our young adults and teenagers, they may not be able to voice at the time. So as a caregiver, you want to come back and say, hey, I know you said no yesterday, but what do you think about today?
Yeah. Also, you mentioned kind of what was important, of course, when we think about school is their academic goals and their educational needs are top priority, of course, when we think about school. But overall, it's also about their social connection. Mm-hmm. How do we form relationships? How do we manage and deal with conflict that comes up? So it's looking at their overall needs at the same time and what is best for them in making that decision.
I think definitely with all ages, but definitely this particular teenager makes me think about, ask them what would they like to see. Mm-hmm. Or communicating with their friends. Like, what is it that you need and what you're missing? Is it you're missing the activity, you're missing the faces, you just want to hang out? Like, what is it that you need? Just hearing from your teenager will be very important. It will bring a whole lot of light to the conversation. Just hearing from them.
Yeah.
Definitely. So we talked a lot about mental health. We talked a lot about what parents can do, creating routines and rituals and advocacy and creating a space for drawing so that way our kids can get things out. Mm-hmm. But it's still summertime. Yes. And it's still like we just enter summer and now we're talking about school. But it typically happens like that every year. But unfortunately with COVID, it's a little different. Mm-hmm. So do you have any suggestions? And I have some too about what parents can do just to have fun with your kids, because that's part of life as well. It's like we deal with conflict, we deal with things, but then we also want to have fun. Any suggestions from you, Shannon?
Well, it is important to notice they are missing out on that social connection piece. And so already knowing that, maybe creating a plan for the family, a special day that is for the two of you or the whole family as a whole, and just doing something fun. And it's not like it's honestly just tap into their interest, what they enjoy doing, and just start from there. It doesn't have to be this whole complicated plan. And I know we are limited on what we can do right now. And so already knowing that is just what kind of games can we play? Or what games do you play? Can you teach me what that's like, and joining in on that with them?
Right. As you were talking, I was like, wait, most of our kids like to play video games.
I know, that's what I just thought.
They like the video games, which would be helpful because then it can teach us, like, bring us into your world.
Yes.
I think oftentimes we're often bringing kids into our world. We need to enter, like what you said, meet them where they are. So teach me how to play this video game so I can see how much fun you're really having, and let me know the dynamics of the game. And then I'm thinking as a parent, you can take that as a teachable moment and then say, okay, this is happening in this video game, then what lessons have we learned? But that's just me being a parent. That's trying to find a mode or an opportunity for teaching. But definitely, like as you mentioned, resources are limited. We are social distancing. We are at home. We are in our own circle. We are with the people that we live with. But then being creative and finding out, like, what could we do? What is there a possibility that we could make a family day, like you mentioned, and say, okay, maybe on Friday, after work is done, we are going to, maybe go sit on the deck or sit on the porch or maybe go for a walk as a family unit together, and then kind of get to know one another, or create like, hey, let's do a beach day. I know we may not all have the privilege of being, because of social distancing, going to the beach, but let's create that. Let's create that atmosphere, that environment to kind of be able to still have fun in the summer. When I think about summer activities, I think about the beach, having a barbecue, playing with your friends. So maybe having those opportunities, like recreate that in your own space would be really helpful. And the kids will have fun.
Yeah, always make it a game. Always make it a challenge, and they are in for it. And so set yourself up for success too. It's if you are wanting to do outside activities or go on a walk, go when the sun is down and make sure it's a little bit cooler outside and just make it more enjoyable. So I do believe we have a question.
Yes, this one says, do you think children are affected by wearing masks, and if they will be affected by it when in school? Does it harm their mental health?
That's a good question, because I think if we focus on children, I think as a whole, it affects our day-to-day routine as well and wearing masks. And so I think already noting that, it's like I'm wearing a mask, you're wearing a mask. Wearing masks together sets everyone up to be safe.
Definitely. I think it's the education part. Wearing a mask has unfortunately prevented some fear in our environment. However, just saying that this is what the mask, what's the purpose of it, and this is here to protect us and not to create fear. So it's redirecting what is intended, what the child may think or what the adult may think at the time, but saying this is a protective measure. We need that for protection.
And also make it creative and fun. What materials do you have to make your own mask and bedazzle it? I don't know. And they can be able to show it off. I feel like it's going to be this new fashion piece.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people with their outfits are matching their masks. And they might be their favorite sports team.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so involve your kids into that. That'll be very, very helpful. Definitely. Because we're dealing with mental health, we want our kids to be well off. How can I get help as a parent for my child and myself during this time, just to kind of help get some more ideas and resources to deal with?
Yeah. And as we were mentioning, as you tune into your children and kind of acknowledging their fears or anxiety or any emotions that do come up, it's important that we do check in with ourselves as well. And so knowing, when you do need time for a little bit of self-care. Self-care
We all need it.
Yes.
We need self-care.
And it's hard to tell ourselves we need to take that break and create that time and space for yourself. And so acknowledging that need for self-care, creating your own routine and ritual, to kind of get it in your mind of, wow, it's time for me to take a break and take a minute. And so I know as a parent, what that looks like, I'm not sure when you have all these tasks and priorities to do. But again, set yourself up for success and kind of know when that break is, that you can create that time, whether it's 5 to 10 minutes out of your day, knowing the impact it can take if you choose to do it every single day.
Absolutely. I had a friend of mine, she was sharing that she had to incorporate other people in the routine of the children, even with virtual learning. So the aunt who lived in the house would be the gym teacher. So as you were talking, I was thinking about those breaks. Maybe we're gonna do some exercises in the middle of taking those breaks or doing, something to kind of keep us stimulated.
But I mentioned earlier, even if it is, I know in school settings, they do this, some classrooms, but giving yourself a brain break when you go back in that routine of school. If it happens to be virtual, kind of allowing every 45 minutes or so, take a 5-minute brain break. It's hard to sit there and be on a laptop, I know, for myself. So I can only imagine for a youth, a child, that it would be challenging. And so there's brain breaks. You can look that up on Google, and there's lots of different activities that are definitely available.
Awesome. I think we have another question.
Questions?
Yeah, this one says, how do you know if your child needs more support mentally than you can offer? What are trigger signs?
We definitely talked about that. So trigger signs for your child you definitely want to notice, you would know your child's behavior. If anything is outside the norm, their sleep patterns, their eating habits, their mood, irritability, or mood swings. You want to pay attention to those signs and then be able to address them as quickly as possible. And you may check in, depending on the age of your child, how you check in on your child is important. But then definitely the resources to connect the child to the right person to help them get through this. What do you think?
Yeah, it's noticing those changes in behaviors and asking more questions like, what is it that I can do to help you? Or what do you need from me? Or what do you need for yourself right now? And so creating that open and safe space, like we said during the emotion check-in, daily check-in of what it's like, allows more opportunity for those open and honest conversations. And we have another question?
Yes, this will be our final question, and it is from a teacher. And she says, I'm a teacher and the stress is getting to me as I don't love teaching virtually last year, but I'm scared to go back. Any tips to help me center myself?
Definitely. Just stress in general is something that we're all dealing with. I think definitely finding ways to be able to be mindful, practice mindfulness, and that can look differently for you, whatever activities that interest you, to actually be in that activity, to kind of take your mind off of the stress, and then also just being engaged in things you like to do will help you, again, manage your stress and your coping skills.
I do want to validate that. I have a friend who is a teacher, and I know there's new expectations being set up for teachers, for you guys when you head into this new school year. And so just focus on each day and knowing what you can do and what you can control, because a lot does feel out of our control right now. And so, like you said, mindfulness looks different for everyone. And so it's just focusing on being in the present state and not being set on what's to come or in the past. It's just focusing on the here and now.
Here and now is important.
So ladies, closing remarks for parents as they make decisions in the weeks to come.
Take care of yourself. Definitely know that you are the best educator for yourself and your family. Know that the decision that you're making is a decision out of love, out of compassion, and definitely you're making the right choice. And in that, be healthy, be strong, incorporate your kids into your decision making, and be present and take one day at a time.
Yeah. And you're not in this alone. And so it's changed for all of us. And so it's just tapping into what connections and relationships that you do have to kind of feel like you are supported and don't have to make this decision by yourself.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Selima and Shannon, for being here today and for speaking to our audience. We want to thank each of you for joining us now every other week for our Lunchtime Live series. We'll see you soon, but remember, Chris 180 is here with resources to help you and your families and your children through this difficult time and this uncertain time in our community. You can go to chris180.org today to find a counseling location near you where we're offering telehealth services as well. We'd love to talk with your family and help you make some best decisions for your children. As always, you can also go to our website to read our blog, where we have resources on grace and joy and finding resilience in this season of life. We'd love for you to let us know what you want to hear from us next week and in the weeks to come. Please drop a comment below or send us a direct message, and we would make sure that we address any concerns or questions in future episodes. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you week after next.